Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Scene, aka The Scene Cast. I am your host, Jeremy Houtsma, licensed mental health counselor, and oh boy, do I have a treat for us today. I was able to interview Jeff Jenkins, the lead singer of Codeseven. Jeff was incredibly fun. He was completely goofy. He kept me on my toes the entire time. And apparently, I'm the only host of a podcast that has ever been able to keep him on the topic of the band rather than sidetracking off to UFOs. Now, I didn't know how to feel about that because maybe, if I was doing my job, we would have gone off to UFOs or whatever. But Jeff assured me that I did a good job. So, hope you guys enjoy the interview. And with that said, welcome to The Scene. That's okay. Thanks for nice background you got there.
Oh, thanks, man. It's my basement.
Well, you got a nice basement, as far as I can see.
Yeah. Looks like you have a bedroom situation. I see a closet to your left.
Yes.
Right?
You are looking at, this is where I sit and do mental health therapy for 10 hours a day.
Is that what you call it? Mental health therapy.
Yeah, that's my job from 8:00 in the morning until 6.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's.
I'm sure that you. Just watching some of your hilarious previous little reels and stuff on Instagram. You seem to be like a very joyous person to be around, and that's a great thing to have in this world.
For the most part, I try. Yeah. I deal with a lot of dark stuff, for the most part. So you got to kind of balance it out.
Yeah.
Somewhat,
Yeah. That's cool of you.
I really appreciate you doing this, especially really fast too.
Yeah. I don't care. I mean, I know the thing is, I know a lot of times it takes a very long time to turn these things around. And
it does.
I wanted to make do it as quickly as possible every single chance I get, because I want to, the record just came out and I want to make it a massive impact on all things social media. We are very unorganized with our social media presence. So
welcome to the club.
Yeah. So as many pieces of content that we can get out there, the better. And Jeremy, I thank you for having me on, because it's really cool. Like I said, I feel like after watching a couple of your reels, I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit.
Cool. I'm glad.
Your Sinatra impression needs a little work.
But, I know. Yeah. I know. It could be, I moved from New Jersey to the Pacific Northwest about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So some of that kind of, I've never had any kind of New York, New Jersey accent.
Yeah.
My parents do, really hardcore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that never quite stayed with me. Yeah. In that way. But I'll work on it. I'll get a little finesse it. Just a little bit. Cool. Are you in Winston-Salem still, or?
I am indeed.
Born and raised. You definitely got the accent.
Thanks, y'all. I honestly, I don't know what the accent is.
I mean, as far as it's a generic, I think, from a Northerner's point of view, whatever you want to call me, a generic, very sweet drawl, so to speak.
That's cool. I do feel like I need to change my lighting here. It looks super weird.
Oh, you're fine.
I don't know how many people. I don't do these things often, but I take it a strobe is not an appropriate effect for this. Hang on.
Okay, it's pretty cool though.
I'm trying to find red again. I like the way that. Damn it. Okay, I've passed by red. Okay, gonna leave it at that. Yeah, I like Winston-Salem. It's our biggest export is cancer.
Nice. Yeah. Obesity, maybe.
Yeah. We are known for RJ Reynolds cigarettes and
nice
Nabisco products. So yes, cancer and obesity are two big exports for us.
Right. I never been down in that area. I would really love to. Like I'm a big big foodie. I've spent most of my life. I mean, I've kind of been all over the place. Lived in Oklahoma for a little bit, and Philadelphia and New Jersey, but never really spent any significant amount of time in the South.
What part of Oklahoma?
Tulsa.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
I went to university out there for 2 years.
You said it like you're British. I went to university.
I have a lot of Canadian friends.
Yeah, so you don't call it. You didn't say I went to a university. You said I went to university. So
yes, university.
When you get injured, you go to hospital.
Yes, I watch the telly.
Yes. Okay. Well.
Yeah. So usually, how I kind of like start these things kind of off. Really, it's kind of a free flow conversation. It kind of goes wherever they takes us. Some people, like things a little more formatted. I'm a therapist, so I kind of go all over the place, and I'm not going to therapize you, but you do look pretty screwed up. So
I'm whacked out of my look. There's lots of appropriate terms to use. I do have attention deficit disorder.
Same here.
So if it jumps from point to point, topic to topic, I'm totally cool with that. I'm at your whim. I don't have a hard out or anything. My wife and I usually do watch British television late at night. So at some point I will have to go back upstairs and do that.
No worries. I got 2 kids. So at some point I will have to be dad.
Oh, wow.
Again. So
what type of children do you have?
The small kind.
Okay. All right.
I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Oh, very cool.
Two boys. Yeah.
Very cool. That's
a lot of energy.
Oh yeah. I totally wish I had some of that energy. I don't have kids myself, but I've got nieces and nephews, and yeah, it takes a lot.
It does. Ryan Parrish and I had a really great conversation about that, and he's actually the person who told me to reach out to you guys.
Ryan's great.
We had a really, really good conversation, and it's really cool to kind of see. I know you guys have a pretty, what I guess would call a special relationship as far as like the 2 bands. There's a lot of, you guys recently did a show with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history.
Yeah. It's a lot. There are bands that we consider siblings out there.
Yeah.
Hopes Fall is one of those bands,
Yeah. Yeah. So I like, the first question I like to ask people is just like your introduction to music as a kid. Like what kind of music was in the house? What kind of things did you gravitate to? Like, how were you did you grow up around it?
Oh, absolutely. Personally, I feel that it's always necessary to mention my mom, because in the womb, apparently she had a Sony hi-fi stereo that she would put the headphones on her belly and she would broadcast Motown.
I love Motown.
Yeah, and Jimi Hendrix as well. And, so I think that kind of sunk in. I know that sounds, kids don't have those, but yeah, I could feel it in my bones when I was developing bones. You know what I mean? Like, when I was a little kid, the first things that I remember, obviously, are not particular songs. Well, I think I do remember like maybe Devo being one of those things the first time I ever saw it. Black Sabbath being one of those things the first time I ever heard it. So seeing Devo and hearing Black Sabbath were probably my 2 first favorites. And, as I grew older, I guess I kind of got a little more not just sound associated with music, but just sound associated with the world I lived in. Like, I would like press my ear up against the refrigerator when I was a kid and just listen to the sound of the motor humming. And, I can remember my brother had a cassette player and I had a broken pair of old Sony Walkman headphones that they just had the little, plasticky diaphragm to them.
Yeah.
And I would play like Led Zeppelin 4 through my brother's cassette player and just put the speaker in my mouth and then move my mouth like I was singing the lyrics, and it would change the music. So
that's pretty cool.
But like, there's so many other things. I'm sorry, I live on a pretty busy thoroughfare here. If you hear sirens,
Oh,
in the
you're
background.
fine. Yeah, you'll probably hear my kids in the background a couple times. But
That's but yeah, like sound in general. I think the most important thing for me when I was a kid was just like, like discovering things like, wow, that's how you make an actual note on a guitar, not just by moving your hand over the strings, but by depressing the fret and the string together in order to make a resonant tone. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And, you know, my brother had a bass, but I don't remember at home having a bass guitar amplifier. So a lot of times it was just me sort of pressing my head against the actual body of the guitar and listening to those notes. And I do think that's one of the reasons why I am like the way that I am, sort of weirded out in terms of like my love of circuit bending and my love of exploration of like experimental sound and noise. So
yeah. So was your brother older? Was he younger?
He was older. He's older. He's one of my closest friends. His name's Kevin. And shout out to my nephew, Nathan, who's now in his 20s and can play guitar better than I ever could. So, yeah.
Isn't that amazing how it works?
Yeah.
Right. Was your brother like a big influence on you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When, he was the first person in the house to have a CD player.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That sounds old, but cassettes and vinyl were really, when I was a young kid, cassettes and vinyl were all that you had. And then my brother has this nice, cool stereo in his room and, buys these CD box set collections were a big thing at the time.
Yeah.
And I can remember, things like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Clapton, all these, just an endless number of things that my brother got me into. Aerosmith, all the classic rock bands, I guess. And as I grew older, I always have wanted, when I make music, I want to always try to like make something that my brother would enjoy, also something that kind of like harks back to the time when we were kids. So.
Yeah. What inspired you, I guess, to like just pick up an instrument and just start fiddling around?
It's funny because I still try to impress that kid. You know what I mean? That kid that picked up his guitar and looked in the mirror for the first time. Anytime I'm like really nervous, I always think, you remember when you were like 12 or 13 years old, maybe younger, and you looked in the mirror and you just saw James Hetfield, like, like this powerful looking, like Zakk Wylde or Randy Rhoads or whatever it was that was staring back at you holding that guitar. It just looked so impressionable in my mind. In my hindsight, I kind of want to impress that kid every time that I get really nervous or whatever. I'm just like, take it easy. He's the only person in the world that you need to put an awesome impression on.
Yeah.
And just make a good show for that kid and you'll be all right. You know what I mean?
That's pretty cool.
I guess it was those early times of me just feeling that awesome feeling of hitting a power chord for the first time or learning an alternate tuning for the first time. Those are things that are like.
Did you explore stuff like, I'm trying to think about what, year wise, like what were some of the kind of tones that you would play around with, or just even, did you mess around with a lot of pedals? Did you mess around with,
to be honest with you, no, I didn't really. I took an electronics class in high school and I failed it miserably, which is so ironic that years later that I would find this like fascination with sound and with circuit bending and electronic music that is just like, I feel like I can do no wrong because there is no wrong. It's like, you don't, Frank Zappa said the whole thing about wrong notes or whatever. That's, that kind of jazz mentality about music. Music is whatever you can compose bits of sound to. Steve Reich literally makes music that is like, like windshield wipers, like, and the undulation and the time signatures behind that. He'll choreograph musical pieces based on natural acoustic phenomenon.
Right.
And, like I said, I sort of failed that electronics class. And then, I think at the time, guitar effects pedal technologies were just streamlined to those basic, few sets of things that you could incorporate in between your guitar and your amplifier. And in reality, guitar and recording effects pedals in general are, not really needed. You know what I mean? You should be able to express purely yourself and the amplifier, or just the sound hole of the guitar, just as experimentally, if you had like, $200,000 worth of effects units in front of your guitar. So,
yeah. I remember growing up, we had starting to play guitar myself, and there was an older guy at my church. His name was Gary Brown. And I'd listened to some Steely Dan, and I was just kind of talking. He was an old hippie guitar player from back in the day. Then he's kind of cleaned up and was a Swiss banker. That's a long story. But, I was talking to him just as a teenager, 13, 14 years old. And I was listening to Reelin' in the Years, and that kind of distortion, that little guitar, like, and I was talking to him, and I was like, what did you, I was so naive, because I was like, what did you do? What did you guys do for like distortion back then? He was like, we just cranked the amp. Like, there was no like, I'm used to, I'm sitting here, I'm 13, 14 years old. It's the mid 90s, and I'm playing with Boss overdrive pedals. Yeah. Or like a little, a Boss pedal board that has all these digital, components on it.
The
we just cranked it. Yeah. We just cranked it up. And that was like, it was so, I don't know what it was. It was a little like mind blowing to me, because at the time there's all this access to the things that you could have, right? All these different kind of sounds and stuff. And it's like the tone that I was looking for, was amazed by, was just somebody cranking up his amp and going straight through.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. And when you look at it, like, like the entirety of the 60s was all about like, what can we do to change these pieces of tradition, and
right. Yeah.
Then the 70s came along, and they were like, what can we do to perfect these pieces of changed tradition? And then the 80s came along, and the 80s was like, what can we do to just totally, like undo these points of tradition,
Right.
And then along come the 90s, and the 90s kind of, rather than being a culmination of, this is just for me personally, rather than being a culmination of the past and the present, just be in the now, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And, or rather than the past and the future, just be living in the now. And I think that's a lot of what, like the attitude of music when we first started being a band in the 90s was, let's just ride this right now. Let's wear baggy pants and see how long baggy pants get us, like.
Isn't that funny that stuff is now popular again?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like everything cycles, but that's,
yeah. But I don't know where I'm going with that. Yeah. Basically, like, I feel like, what you mentioned about it just being like, they just cranked up the amp, at the end of the day, that's really all it is about.
Right.
Like, DJs like it to be as loud as it could possibly be, if in this world, if you're not loud, you're going to be kind of forgotten. So
yeah,
that's sad.
So take me, like, what was one of the first things, maybe not one of the first things, but what stands out in your mind as something that you listened to, like a piece of music or something that you were just like, wow, that's something different. Like something that stood out to you.
Yeah, there was a couple of things, like, I guess probably Planet Caravan by Black Sabbath. The song Orion by Metallica.
Mm-hmm.
Songs not just instrumental, but like songs that were so weird and sounded like they were from the farthest reaches of the universe. Pink Floyd Comfortably Numb always comes to mind, because it's just such a cerebral song, and a lot of the earlier Pink Floyd catalog as well. King Crimson has always been one of my favorite bands, and I think the first time that I ever heard, some I guess like late or early to mid 70s era King Crimson was just like phenomenal to me. And I was like, this is a game changer. When I was a kid listening to that, I was just like, wow, I didn't know music could get this far. You know what I mean? Could get this strange. So but some of those things. Yeah. And then in the later eras, like things that came along that really changed me are things such as like Sigur Rós and Radiohead and, you know, the like. I feel like there's always some amazing pieces of music that you can listen to every single time you listen to it. You hear something new.
Right.
And all of the
Sigur Rós does that all the time. Yeah. So when did you start, you know, playing in bands, or like what were your first like iterations maybe of Codeseven, or just even like playing around with friends?
Just I guess like junior and senior in high school kind of thing for me. I'm the same graduating class as two of the members of Codeseven. Eric, our guitar player, is a year behind them, and then Matt, our drummer, is a year behind Eric. I believe that's how it goes.
Yeah.
But I was working in a record store, and these guys came in, and one of the coworkers that I worked with was like, "Hey, these are my friends. They're looking for a singer in their band." And at the time, I was in like a 9 Inch Nails Ministry cover band. And I am not if you know me, you know I'm not a guitar player, and that's what I played in those bands. And I was so happy that I'm still very close with one of the members of the industrial cover band that I did. We did like Ministry and so many other songs. I think we did maybe we did like a Helmet song or something like that too. But I'm still friends with that guy, and he let me down so awesome. You've never heard anybody
so sweetly.
Yeah, you've never heard anybody tell you that you're a terrible guitar player as sweetly as he did. He just like one day he calls me out of the blue and he's just like, "Hey man, you're a really good singer in this other band." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, man."
Great.
And years later, I realized, that's the sweetest way of telling me that I suck on guitar.
That's amazing. So I mean, like, did you originally start singing? So you obviously played guitar.
Yeah.
And then when were you like, I can sing? Like, how does that?
I had no clue.
Yeah.
At the time, I think, you know, like things like Anthrax and Testament, bands like Propane and Pantera and Souls at Zero and Clutch and Corrosion of Conformity was one of my favorite like bands, because I was like, hey, these guys are from North Carolina and they are one of the heaviest things on the planet. And, you know, at the time, I think they had just done that Black Sabbath tribute thing. So I was like, this is so great. You know, like a band from North Carolina can play metal, and like it's just mind-blowingly big sounding, you know.
Yeah.
And I just kind of like emulated all those vocalists, knowing that some of them were guitar players didn't bother me, because I was like, hey, I've literally just got a microphone in my hand. And when I first joined Codeseven, the first iteration was with a guy named Craig as the second vocalist. Craig was shortly thereafter replaced by David Allen Owen, who is one of my closest friends still to this day. And Dave is on those first few Codeseven albums as the quote unquote screamer. And even though I screamed a lot too, pretty shortly after joining, there was a notion like, hey, let's try to maybe not just do heavy stuff, but like try to incorporate stuff that, you know, like Deftones was doing at the time.
Yeah.
Some of the more like melodic things. You know, we were really big into this band called Orange 9mm. And Orange 9mm just like changed the game for us. And we did, you know, like music that we thought sounded like Orange 9mm. Dude, I'm so sorry about my lighting in here. It just looks so wonky.
I don't care. I don't usually put too many videos out on. I mean,
okay,
it's mostly audio, but I do.
Okay, but you can hear the audio. The audio.
Yes, perfectly. Yeah. That's right. So there's, I mean, like, there's that really stark shift too in some of the Codeseven albums when you start getting more into that kind of like, I would call it more like ethereal type, atmospheric type sounding than from like your first two albums. Like when you guys approached a song in the beginning, like what was that process like? Did somebody come in with a riff, or did like how did you build something?
At its core, every single time anything has been accomplished in this band, it's been because of our drummer, Matt.
Okay.
From the beginning, Matt kind of like, I noticed how I would show up over at their house and he would have on headphones and he'd be playing along with someone else's music. But if you've ever tried to just listen to isolated drums, that can be confusing unless it's a recognizable Walk This Way by Aerosmith kind of drum beat.
Right. Yeah.
Something that's built around, or like any song by Refused. The drum beat on any song by Refused. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just such an iconic, recognizable drum beat. But Matt was playing stuff that wasn't iconic and wasn't recognizable unless you were hearing it through his headphones. And because, I'd walk into the room and he'd be just jamming on something completely new to me because I'd never really stopped and listened to it. Oh, that's the drums from a Jawbox song, or that's the drums from, a Deftones song or something like that. I never paid attention to things too clearly when he was doing that. And I think a lot of those ideas that originally came out because we didn't know what the other person was doing. We didn't know that the other person was playing a riff on guitar that may have been influenced by somebody else. And because our ears were fresh to that, it just kind of like developed us, somewhere along the way, we would have developed a song. And each member of Codeseven was great at doing that. Eric was great at bringing riffs to the game. James was really good at the experimental guitar parts of our first songs, like doing things like Tom Morello would do with the cutoff switch on his guitar, and like making things on guitar a little more percussive than you would think in a metal band to do.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, yes, it was rapcore music, but we didn't know it was called rapcore at the time.
Right.
We just thought it was called like, I don't know. We thought it was like punk. I think we called it a punk band, cause I never really wanted to put a label on it, but if anything, in the early years, we were kind of an indie band because we were doing it all by ourselves.
Yeah.
Dave, who is the second vocalist, was doing all of our booking. We're getting all of our like associated connection. The people that we were associated with were connections that came from Dave's connections and through things like, magazines. You used to be able to go to your local periodical section of your local bookstore and buy this magazine called Book Your Own Life. And there was another one called Maximum Rock and Roll. And we would look in the back of these magazines and they'd be like, hey, coming to St. Louis, sleep on our couch, play a show here.
That's rad.
And because we just started traveling pretty early on nonstop, that was a lot of fun. Like that kind of helped us. Like when it came time to come back and start writing music, we were like, oh yeah, this is great, but we're kind of bored on it. Let's keep moving. Let's keep changing. So.
Yeah. Did you do a lot of writing on the road?
No, rarely ever. Yeah. I think the way that the twins in the band, I think the way that they work, they need to have their comfort zones set up around them so that they can write music. You know what I mean? And it's very hard to have a comfort zone on the road. So
what was it like stepping in to make your first records? Like what was that process like for you guys? I mean, that's a very vague question, but like specifically for you.
From what I've heard, I think a lot of people are like really scared when they first come into the studio.
Yeah.
I think if I'd have known how much money was involved in putting it together, I would have been a little more scared, but I've been oblivious to those things of monetary value most of my life. So, taking it seriously was never a thing at first. And then it became very much a thing as we went forward. So the first thing that we did, because I think a lot of that funness of being in the studio was, like we were in the studio here in town with my good friend Doug Williams, and being in the studio, I have no clue. Doug's a couple of years our senior, and I'm not sure what he thought was like, except maybe who are these snot-nosed kids and why are they wasting so much time in the studio? But little did he know we were having so much fun that we caught some of that fun on tape on the recording. And that kind of explains how our attitude was in the studio. I think a lot of us were just, crazy to actually not be the nerds, because through high school, I think we'd all been kind of like the nerds, like in the music, heavy metal music was our thing. And we all kind of went to schools where if you weren't into, pop, country, or hip hop, you were going to get kind of like, like shuffled to the side as the, weird crowd, And I'm so happy that that doesn't happen anymore. It seems like schools and kids and, younger social circles seem to have like such inclusivity.
It's a real mishmash of things. Like I've talked a couple times on the podcast with people just in general about how scenes were very definable by clothing. And, like you could see what somebody was wearing. You could see that band t-shirt. You could see X, Y, and Z and be like, oh, they're part of my thing, type of thing. Right.
And you knew a girl was going to be a heartbreaker if she wore Delia's. You knew she was the girl that the emo songs of the early aughts were written about. They were all written about her.
In Jenkins, yeah. But like because I do work with a lot of teenagers. I did for quite a long time. Like it's a very mishmashed type of I think Ryan Parrish called it like monoculture almost, where it's like everything is kind of mushed together. When I ask somebody the most generic question of like, what kind of music do you listen to? It's very much, you get the like everything, right? Yeah. Like, and there are no, it's very accepting, but also what I find too is that there's a lot of things that teenagers these days find really hard to kind of define themselves as, right? Like, or just have an identity to. Like when I was going to school, so I was like a semi-sheltered, like Christian kid. And when I went to public school, my friends were like metalheads. And so they had they had their Cowboys from Hell t-shirt and, Metallica and all those things. And that whole world was completely foreign to me, but that was them. They were the metal kids. Right. Yeah. And like, they had that kind of identity. Whereas you might walk around and see a kid with a Metallica shirt and be like, oh, you listen to Metallica. And they'll be like, I don't know. I got this from Target. Like type of thing. Is that,
however, think about this. Anytime I see somebody in there, there's this meme of like, but like the toxic male point of view of, yeah, but can you name, Gatekeeper guys?
Right. Yeah.
Can you name 3 songs? Here's what I think. Here's my theory. That person that's wearing the shirt may not know anything at all about the bands. Who cares? But somebody is going to investigate. Somebody sees that and they're like, Metallica. I wonder what Metallica is. Because I did that. I was that kid. I saw a kid. My parents used to own a race car business, right? And they like traveled around when I was a little kid, and they would like, we'd go like racetracks and stuff like that. And I would never hang out with the other race car kids. I would always find kids that were wearing heavy metal t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time that I saw a Slayer Rain in Blood t-shirt, I was like, what is this? And so that like the next time that I was at like a music store, music center, whatever, I would pick up that Slayer CD.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind too. Is like,
oh yeah.
Like there are reasons why they haven't heard, and reasons why Target can market Nirvana t-shirts and, like Soundgarden t-shirts. There are reasons that they do that because, hey, this is a form of fashion. I look like older pictures that I've seen of other people that have that identity. So today I'm going as that person. You know what I mean? Tomorrow tomorrow I may put on my Jinkos and my oversized hoodie. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The next day I may put on a flannel shirt and some cut off jeans and some Chuck Taylors. To me it doesn't matter. But as long as there's some kid out there that is like looking at this and being like, oh, I wonder who that band is. Now I'm going to go find that band. And then that kid starts a band. You know what I mean? That kid goes and like is so into Slayer or whatever t-shirt it was that he saw this band that he's in, that it turns him on to these other things. And all of a sudden this kid decides to choose music rather than, attempting to fit into a social circle,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I know gatekeepers are really mad sometimes, especially it seems like the more deep dive the band is, the more you have to like be on the know. Oh my gosh, how do you know who Venom is or whatever it might be? You know,
Right.
That's when those guys that are like, Venom, I'm a Venom fan. You know nothing about this band. Why? Why are you going to be like that? Now you're just you're an elitist who has absolutely no skin in the game because Venom has no fucking clue who you are.
Right. Right.
Excuse my language. I didn't know. Is it okay if I'm okay?
Yeah.
All right. Go. Sorry.
Yeah.
But you get my point. Like,
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
How can you be a gatekeeper when you've probably never seen the band live? You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, in your opinion, this is just interesting. Does gatekeeping have any place?
Oh no, absolutely not. Like I don't think that people's. I'm a huge Billie Eilish fan. Why? What is it about Billie Eilish, who is way younger than me?
Yeah.
Way different of a music, probably different influences, different production values, different, like different upbringing. What do Billie Eilish and I have in common? Absolutely nothing except music. That's the only thing that we have in common is that I like Billie Eilish's music a lot. I like putting on headphones and submerging into my own little world. So if I were to have a hardcore Billie Eilish fan that follows Billie Eilish on every point of social media, comments on every single post that Billie Eilish makes, come at me and be like, you're not allowed to be a fan, I would be really upset about that, I think. So no, I don't think it has any, you know what I mean? Like I have absolutely no reason to be a fan of any band at all, except for the fact that I enjoy their music. So if you come at me and you're like, you don't belong with us, I'm going to feel like, hey, I don't think that band would really want you saying that to me. I think that band would want to have as many fans as they possibly can. And that's why I'm here,
Yeah.
So
did you encounter any of that kind of gatekeeping in the sense of like when you guys were going around and playing shows and quote unquote, like part of the scene?
I'd never mentioned I think I have mentioned this. I've only done a few podcasts before. And I mentioned this one time. It was like, when we first started doing music that didn't have breakdowns in every single song.
Mm-hmm.
It was after Dave had left the band. It was in between an album called Division of Labor and The Rescue. And when we started playing stuff off The Rescue, people just wanted to hear those heavier songs that we played. And like we would have a lot of people that would come to the front of the stage, bless their hearts now, because I know for a fact that now they are fans of our music. But at the time, they were just so bullheaded about the fact that we weren't playing the older, harder stuff that we had played. Yeah. And they would come to the front of the stage and they would literally just turn their backs on us.
Against the stage. My gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, it doesn't matter. I didn't care. I mean, it fueled my fire a little bit more I felt like when they did that, I was just like, well, you know what? I'm going to, instead of singing like Phil Anselmo or whoever it is that you want me to sing like, I'm going to sing like Luciano Pavarotti, And it fueled our fire to keep being different, I think, Yeah. We were like, and then immediately thereafter, like I said, those guys became fans within a year to 2 years. They were like, they realized that, hey, I kind of like other bands that are changing too. There were other bands that were changing at the time, such as like, so there was, like the indie scene was just like heading so much more away from the, esoteric anger that only they knew about into things that were like, I take Sunny Day Real Estate as a great example. You know what I mean? Yeah. They start up, they were a little more aggressive, and immediately thereafter they found their niche and like beautiful songwriting. And bands like Cave In, you know what I mean? They were really heavy early on, and now they're everything. They're heavy and ethereal. And, it just so happened that Codeseven was changing and trying to find our sound. And a lot of people who had bought our previous albums felt kind of ripped off by the fact that I guess they didn't get the memo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, you should put out a different album every time, because the only band that's allowed to do that, the only band that's allowed to put out the same album every single time is AC/DC.
I was going to say AC/DC. Like literally, I was just going to say that, but I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah. I mean, I know I say that a lot, but like, it's true. Why would you want to put out the same thing every single time?
Right. Well, yeah. Can you like take me through that process of going into The Rescue? Like completely different sounding album. Was that intentional, or was that like, this is where we're moving towards? Like,
well, when we mentioned early on about effects and like guitar effects, pedals and things like that, like I was getting into learning a lot about the technology that existed with guitar, and the guys in the band were getting a lot into the same thing. And we just stumbled upon MIDI guitar electronics and incorporating MIDI into our sound, using the guitar as a MIDI controller. And that's where that came about. There was a lot of things that were written on that album that were basically just like piano parts, but James would play them on the guitar,
Yeah.
And I think that kind of helped.
So it was all through experimentation. That was just this.
Yeah, we were there was at no point where we can't be heavy anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like things that we were like totally influenced at the time, Sunny Day Real Estate, Radiohead, but still being influenced by the heavier bands that we knew and loved, Converge and Cave In, and all the bands that we had played with over the years. But we were just doing our own thing, not realizing that it would sound one way or the other. And when it came down to it, we didn't know exactly how we were going to pull off the record in the short amount of time in the recording studios we did. We had a gentleman by the name of Alex Newport, amazing human being. And he came to our hometown and stayed with us for the week that we were in the recording studio, and we got it done. We couldn't believe we got it done with just the tiniest amount of time to kill. And so at the end of the album and the end of the recording process, we just recorded an acoustic ditty that we threw in the end of the album.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait a minute, this is not heavy at all now. You put on it start to finish and it's like super surreal how it doesn't sound like it belongs in the genre of music that we play. But we were stoked on that because we were like, wow, we put together something that we feel like is completely us, for the first time, not having, something that was just we need to be heavy in order to be in this scene. For the first time, having parts that were just heavy enough to represent what we could do. We felt like we'd found our sound. So
when you guys split or just got picked up by, I guess, how was the process of signing to Equal Vision? Because Equal Vision was pretty big at that time ish, I would say, at least within the Vagrant and all those other types of labels.
We got I guess we were brought to their attention by our friends that we were touring with, Coheed and Cambria and Circa Survive and This Day Forward, and a lot of the bands that we were traveling with. Well, This Day Forward before Circa Survive, and bands that we were traveling with that knew folks at Equal Vision that were rallying in our corner, and they were, I guess, maybe speaking to the people at Equal Vision, hey, Codeseven's onto something really cool. And we were just so lucky to have that attention from Equal Vision, because they've been amazing. It's been amazing working with Equal Vision ever since we were introduced to them. They've always been on our side, and always, it's so much fun to work with people who actually believe in what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And like I said, I would probably have to say that it was Dan Sanshaw and a couple of the folks that were rallying for us. Like I said, Anthony from, at the time, Seosin, and the guys in This Day Forward, and Coheed and Cambria, a lot of others that we were traveling with were just so special, and that just happened to be that they had working relationships with Equal Vision that were developing. So they said, hey, how about Codeseven?
Codeseven is obviously its own band, has its own story within the music scene, and touring with and being friends with bands like Coheed and Cambria, who got massively huge. What was it? What was it like as a, I don't want to say smaller band, but what was it like watching that process?
It was
watching
awesome.
These bands. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the first time that I saw action figures of my buddies. I was like, hey, that's guys in Fall Out Boy. Hey, we piggybacked on their video, like we with their video budget or something like that. Like somehow or the other, we ended up making a music video because the director of their video was able to use a little bit of their budget to buy time for us to make a music video, and that was really cool. And then I saw like Fall Out Boy action figures, and I was
something about that makes me laugh so hard, and I don't know why, but just like seeing action figures of people you know.
Yeah. But that's the truth. I mean, like, I feel like that when, and you know what? It was absolutely no surprise because they were so talented and so great, and they blew us away every time that we would play with any of these bands, you know? Coheed and Cambria especially, there were just something so magical about them. It's like they caught something that was unique to me because it was progressive rock.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I've always been like I said, from the beginning, I'd been like a big prog rock fan. And I was always into those weirder King Crimson songs and Black Sabbath songs that were just like, you know, and this band had that aesthetic. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I don't care what they're talking about. Yes, I love what they're talking about, you know, and the way that they're saying it, you know.
I was a massive Second Stage Turbine Blade fan.
Yeah.
Like got into it so hard.
Yeah. And in hindsight, it's no surprise because these are bands that were just like every night that we would play with them, they were so amazing. And I do remember thinking that it was so awesome. We were friends with a band called Before Today, and Before Today later became Pierce the Veil. And we were just so happy to like sleep under their pool tables and like, you know, have their mom make us carne asada when we would go and stay with them. It was just so amazing to have these friends that finally got their comeuppance, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
And I guess everybody's always been like, well, why didn't you guys ever get that? I don't care because it's what they deserved. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that it isn't what we deserve, but again, you know, like maybe our time is still yet to come. Like maybe we will have this large scale success, but I'm not going to care one way or the other. And I'm never going to hate on my sibling bands because they got it. They got the sold out shows. Another factor that I think happened with that is these sort of mainstream recognition of Vans Warped Tour, Hot Topic at the Mall.
Yeah.
And those two factors, I think, with, you know, also considering that at the time, the internet and YouTube were just now taking off with, you know, like, you know, I can see a band's performance when I want to kind of thing. Right. All I have to do is go on the internet. Maybe before we broke up the first time, that wasn't really a thing, but shortly after us breaking up, it became a thing, you know, within a couple of years. So I'm really stoked to know that all of those friends that were on the cover of Alternative Press magazine, like every week, got that, because I would never want it any different. I would never say, hey, we deserve that. You know, that's not who any
did
of the
you
members
guys, did you guys want that? Was that something that was desirable for you guys? Or,
man, if anybody wakes up in the morning and tells you that they don't want to sell out, you should probably ignore that person, because that person is really, they're one of those gatekeeper elitists that's like, oh, I can't believe that, you know?
Yeah.
I can't believe these guys have sold out. Yeah, avoid that person at all costs, because they're a very negative person. Anyone who tells you that they don't want to be the center of attention is flipping lying to you, man.
Yeah.
I'm a ham. I'm the world's biggest ham. You know what I mean? Put a camera in front of me and I will perform. It doesn't matter, you know? So yeah, I think I think all of us wanted it, but the problem with this factor of wanting it is just like, you know, so many higher ups were telling people, you need to have this, you need to have this.
Right.
There were factors of image and presentation that I wasn't exactly comfortable with. So not really worried that I may have avoided some of that. I feel like I've remained t-shirt and jeans kind of guy my entire life. So there's not going to be a point at which you're going to come along in the early aughts and tell me do that, because I'd have been like, hell no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I think all of us were like that. So you know, I'm sure the people who were backing us at the time were like, what are you thinking? Why would you say no to this? Or why would you like even some of the members of our own band, we would have conflicts about like, why did we turn down this? Or, there was never any bitterness about it. It was always like, we always landed on our feet, and we, to this day, I don't think that we would be as close as we are as a band. Codeseven has always been 3 brothers and 2 other dudes that had just been the closest of friends. At the end of the day, we realized that like family comes first.
Right.
And even though we broke up, we never broke up. We were still getting together every weekend to watch football or soccer or whatever, and, I've worked with all the other guys in the band for their businesses over the years. And so yeah, that wouldn't have happened if we had become that alternative press band. I think we would have probably broken up. There could have been some bitterness. That's just speculation on my part, but
sure.
I really do feel like in order for it to work out the way that we did today, the way that we just have put out our newest record, and it is something that is, in my opinion, absolutely awesome and really rad. And I can't believe that we did our best record yet. And it took 20 years for that to happen,
Yeah.
That would not have happened if we were told, hey, this year you guys got to put out another record, keep pumping them out. I don't know what kind of iteration would have happened. And
did you ever feel that pressure in the band when you guys were like to pump out something, or
it was all internal? But no, I don't think we never felt it. We wouldn't have allowed it. That's just so much of what we were. We would not have allowed it. We never had a record label that came to us and said, do this. The record labels have always been just like, let's see what you can offer. You know what I mean? Let's support you. Let's support you. We trust you. And that's really cool to have that kind of trust, especially when it comes to, like allowing us to do it. I'm sure that Equal Vision was pretty pissed when we split up, because we were having a lot of support at the time. But like the reason for our split was so strange. At the end of the day, I look at it, it was just like we were so tired of coming home from tours and having nothing and having to start again. And it was a lot of just like go tour all the time. And it was tearing us apart personally. So I think that's why we broke up. But it's sort of weird to say that you broke up when you didn't really break up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all remained friends, and the outside world knew of us as being defunct as a band. But I don't think there's any person in the band that ever felt like, hey, we're never going to get back together again. So
was there a specific point where it was like, this is done? Like,
no. I mean, in my heart, if you're asking me, that would depend on who you ask in the band. In my heart.
No, I'm asking you. Yeah.
It never was. I was, I guess I was a little concerned. I was just like, well, now I've got to go, and I was living in a different city at the time. And I think that's about as close as I got to feeling alienated from the band Codeseven. I didn't talk about it for a long time, but like I was, just I became a hermit over several years. The years that I like kind of got invested in circuit bending and circuit modification and building my own instruments. And, I was a real hermit, and I lived in a city that's about 30 minutes away from here at the time. And that's about as far away from the band as I ever got, was from 2006 to 2015. Even though in 2010, we got back together for a tour with Circa Survive, Animals as Leaders, and Dredge, which was absolutely awesome. We came off of the road, and, there wasn't any discussion. At the time, that tour wasn't with Matt, our drummer. It was with a drummer named Todd Turner. And Matt, our drummer, at that time, he was living in a different city. So, yeah, I think that would have also been one of those points. Even though we were functioning as Codeseven, it was not the Codeseven that we knew and loved. It was an iteration of Codeseven that was sustainable for a 2-month tour, kind of thing. So, and then once Matt moved back to North Carolina, again, it was just like football games every weekend. We all have the same friend circle. Anytime there's a cookout, we're always there. And that was about as far. Yeah, like I said, from the period of 2006 for me, period of 2006 to 2015, when I moved back to the city, that was probably about as alienated from Codeseven as I could have possibly been. So,
yeah, what was the transition out of doing touring life and kind of back into? I've heard it likened to from other guests, like almost like going from the military back into like the real world. Like, was that a hard transition, or did it feel natural, or like, what was that like for you?
I think when it happened immediately after it happening, I started thinking, okay, there was so many times that we were on the road that we had to go to Guitar Center to have something fixed, or we had to go to an amp store to have something fixed, or we had to, and now this is just me personally. I got so frustrated of not knowing how things worked, not being able to fix them myself, that I kind of took a deep dive into, hey, if something screws up on the road, if I happen to go back out again someday, I want to know how to be able to fix it then and there.
Right.
And that was just like my sort of introduction into tearing apart things that were electronic and putting them back together, you know? And so that wasn't hard for me at all. That was just like, I'm prepping, I'm going back to school, even though I never went back to school. I'm going to my own school of knowing how to fix things so that when we go back out again, I'll be prepared. And like that obviously led me into a world of discovering new technologies and discovering things that could make our band easier. And if you look at technology over the past 20 years, it's just so much easier to do what we were doing then now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so efficiently. So it didn't take me much to come off the road and feel that way. But, you know, like 3 or 4 years in, there was a longing to get back out. And I think that's why we did that Circus Survive, Animals as Leaders and Dredge tour. It's just really that need to tour was still in our blood.
Yeah.
You know, even if it wasn't all members of the band, it was still in our blood. And so we went back out and did that, came back home. And, you know, again, anytime that you're out for a long time and have to come back and find a job and get back into the real world, it's really super frustrating and weird. So what happened after we came off the Circus Survive tour is our guitarist Eric decided to open up his own brewery here in town.
Oh, nice.
And John and James decided to open up their own direct-to-garment t-shirt printing business here in town. And yeah, it's pretty fun that their businesses have gone, you know, so well during the dormant period of Codeseven.
It's kind of funny when you were talking about selling out or whatever. I was really heavily into the craft beer scene for a long time, and working in bottle shops and talking with brewery reps and things like that. And you would kind of get this bite from, you know, people who were like, oh, this was sold to Anheuser-Busch, or this was sold to these different like mega corporations. And then people would totally gatekeep. Right. And my thinking was always, because we had a friend of ours a long time ago, his name is Josh Freem. He's got a big brewery now in Pacific Northwest. And I was like, dude, if Anheuser-Busch came up to like a Josh Freem's brewery and was like, we want to buy you out, I'd be like, do it. Like, like, do it. Like, you people crap on these decisions. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you put the time, sweat, and tears into it. Like, running a business is hard. It's like just like a band, like all those things. And it's like, if somebody's like, here's more money and we're going to make it a little bit easier. Like,
we're going to make it easier for you to do what you love to do and make it sustainable.
Right. Yeah. Right. You'd feel like, it's an easy decision.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, fuck the cred. Like,
okay. Yeah. Like, is that something about being in your 20s? I'm sorry, but that must have been something about being in your 20s in the early aughts, maybe. I don't know. I can't figure it out. It's just like, why would you turn something like that down? You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's the culture of like coming off of this, like a grunge era mentality of like, everybody should be like Eddie Vedder and we should buck the system like Kurt Cobain, you know? Not worth it, dude. At the end of the day, you need to make a house payment.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, people have families to feed. And I think one of the episode I'm about to put out is with Johnny Smurdo from Beloved or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and like they became family men, and like they had mouths to feed, they had things to do. They were like, knew that we weren't going to blow up and be like the biggest thing. So like we had to transition out. We had to do this. And you know, if you're given the opportunity to feed your family and do what you love, like, why not?
Yeah.
So what took you guys into making this album? Like,
that would probably been when we went to Furnace Fest.
Oh yeah,
that has like become the I guess the mythos behind us getting back together has spun from that. I don't know. I think it was just, even if Furnace Fest hadn't happened, I think it would have still been like a frustrating thing for us to all come to terms and say, we have more to say.
Yeah.
We need to get back together. But Furnace Fest made it easy for us to get back together and say, hey, we have more to say. We have more to offer. It's like sort of an unfinished conversation. Like the last album was like an unfinished conversation of what we needed to do as human beings and making music. We never got a chance to follow up on it like it should have been, which, like the record that we just did, I feel like is so much further beyond anything that we could have possibly done. So,
yeah, that's right. I mean, do you guys have future plans for stuff or?
Oh yeah. We're not stopping as far as like the creative process is going. We're still writing music. We're looking forward to playing on, like festival circuits and small tours and things like that. So yeah, like we're fully functional as a band, trying to put things together now in a world where social media demands and that sort of like the need for an app for you to apply yourself in terms of creating content constantly and making yourself a viable entity on the internet. Don't know how we're going to monetize that, except for the fact that I have no worries, because at the end of the day, I know how talented we are.
Right.
And that we'll need to come out with another record eventually. And that's when I'll start to get really happy again. So in between now and then, it's just all downhill for me. Yeah. Until the creative process is just me being like, yes, we have a record out. It came out how many months ago? Yeah.
Right.
And to stay fresh and stuff like that, I think that's what we're learning to deal with and learning to create content for our record. So there's lots of pictures that we took during the recording process and the writing process. There's lots of demo versions, 1,000,001 demo versions. So who's to say that we won't come out with something surrounding that? There's no fewer than, I guess, probably about 40 hours worth of material and stuff that we've done.
Yeah.
Just so much material of stuff that we've done and kind of like shuffled to the side once we decided to start back, because it became pretty much for me, it became a 24-hour thing. Only a couple of days to rest every week when the writing process came along again. Thankfully I work at a place where it's a live music venue. So,
oh, nice.
I would get a lot of inspiration there. I would come home and write into the wee hours of the morning, wake up the next day and just do the same thing again, So because I feel comfortable knowing that there's a lot of the stuff that I did that didn't go on the record that I would love for people to hear. I have no doubt in my mind that the other members of the band don't have the same going on themselves. I know they got a lot of material that was, and, that process of weeding out the stuff that's weird, the stuff that sounds good, the stuff that sounds like it could be a song, and the stuff that we know for a fact is a song. That's just part and parcel to the entire process of being in a band. It's like what we've always done. So
yeah, that's rad. I mean, what I like a couple more questions, and can get going back to watching your British TV shows. And
yeah, you're fine, dude.
But fun. Like just playing live for yourself, what's that like for you? And specifically more like I had a conversation with Jason Gleason from First Seems Forever, that there's this like inhabitable space on the stage that some people get into, where it's like you kind of enter this kind of zone when you're playing. Or for me, it's like whenever I would go on stage, I would come alive in certain ways that I didn't necessarily know were there, like until I stepped on stage. Like what's the live playing experience like for you?
Well, I like I said, I'm a ham. Get me in front of put a jackass in front of a microphone and let's see what happens. Let's find out the hard way what happens. as I've grown older, I've learned how microphones work, which is fun. I think that was the whole thing of where I'll show you. I used to do this.
Yeah.
What am I doing there? Why are you covering up? So when I found out that sound goes in this way, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Wow. But yeah, that since I discovered that's helped out a lot, as a musician. Nice. Also, taking it and putting it on the end of a microphone and swirling it around, putting on the end of a cord and swirling it around. It's not what's supposed to be done with it. And that's bad for what I hear, that's bad for the cord too.
Right. Yeah.
So, keeping it on a stand and maybe being about 5 or 6 inches away. That's important also.
Right.
So, beyond that, if you don't get in the headspace of where you were when you wrote the song, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But by all means, make sure to be as true to that original version as you can. And make sure that you're able to hear your drummer. And because so much of singing is about this percussive aspect, your plosives, your phrasing, your dynamics. And, don't back away from the microphone so much. I think there was a lot of times when I would back away from the microphone in the early years. And being on stage in front of your friends, the people who are there to see you, your band members are just as important to those people. And never forget that. Never forget that you have these people who are, literally their necks are on the line too. I think a lot of times whenever anyone is on stage and they freeze up and this mental block comes along, it's so weird because it's like, when the mental block's not there, it's like you can easily take the escalator.
Right.
But when the mental block is there, it's okay to take the stairs. Don't worry about taking the stairs. You're going to get up there anyway. You know what I mean? And I mean that in terms of like, am I able to hit this note that I'm worried about hitting? Or do I feel like this is going as well as I think it should be going in my head? You know what I mean? Or I was sick last week and now my throat's a little sore. Am I sounding raspy? Am I sounding nasally Sometimes you don't need to worry about that. You just have to take the stairs because otherwise you're just going to stand at the bottom floor. You're just going to stand on the bottom floor. You know what I mean? So instead of taking the escalator all the time, you have to take the stairs. But what's easier if you keep all the factors in mind of what it means to perform as a vocalist, the only thing that you really need to remember is if you want to get up the escalator easily, make sure you've stayed hydrated, make sure you got a good night's sleep, make sure that you warm up before you perform. And if you're on tour and you're doing it a lot, make sure that when you come off stage, you're warming down. Because a lot of times what happens is when you're performing, you get in this really loud, I'm on stage, I've got to perform and project. And then you come off stage and you're still like that. You're like, hey, thanks for coming to the show. I know you're only like 2 feet away from me, but I'm still talking. So what I do now is anytime that I come off stage with the band, and I've just, not that I play with a lot of different bands, but I've done just work here and there with other musicians. And I feel like I'm still talking loud. In order to sustain my voice, I'll just give myself a minute or two in the bathroom and I'll just stand kind of close to a wall and just talk, return my voice to a normal. And that way it doesn't stay strained all night. And, and I try to let any kind of any kind of grudge or anything I might have against another band member. It's so important to just let it go for those few moments, not that we're grudge carrying band members, but we are brothers. You know what I mean? There are we're all 5 of us, even though 3 of us are blood brothers, there are 5 brothers in our band. And no matter what's going on for them, it's just like I said, it's equally as important that their necks are on the line here too. So don't hold any grudges. I think that's a big mental block when you're on stage, but that's what it's like for me. That's what, if you were to ask me what it takes for me to put on a good show, what it takes for me to get up the escalator easily every single show, that would be it. It would just be a couple of those things, especially hydration and sleep. As a vocalist, and also don't, you can edit this out, but I smoke a lot of pot and I don't drink alcohol and that helps. I drink a lot of coffee and smoke weed, but and a lot of people.
Do you find that the weed affects your do you vape or do you?
No. I'm only analog.
Yeah. Does that affect your voice?
No.
No.
Yeah, I was addicted to nicotine for several years, and that affected my voice. But because I'm such a small timer, I don't smoke a lot, but I do smoke often. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the only reason I guess I don't do it in other formats, in the digital format, is because it's so hard to know exactly what you're getting.
Right.
And I've had the same. But yeah, like, no, it doesn't affect my voice. It kind of helps with creativity. It helps me unwind. It helps me also, like, if I feel like if if I don't want to spend too much time in my head, I probably don't need to do it. But if it's okay that I'm spending time in my own head, I like to do it,
Yeah.
So like sometimes I'll smoke before we perform. Sometimes I won't. It's just neither here nor there for me. But the fact that I don't drink alcohol has always been weird. I've never been a drinker. And I know that's weird for some bands because there's always like a person in the band that's heavily intoxicated, or, not every single situation, so many.
It's weird what we normalize, right? Where like I had to stop drinking alcohol a couple months ago just because of some digestive issues and things like that. Yeah. And getting away from alcohol as just a thing that's just done, or just like you begin to realize how much socially things revolve around alcohol, whether it's like, hey, let's grab a drink, or like, let's do this, and trying to find alternative ways.
Have you ever watched British television? Every single interaction. Hey, I've just cut my thumb. Oh, let's have a drink. Hey,
right.
Let's
go have a pint.
Let's go have a pint. Every single, that's the answer for everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, okay, so with Eric, our guitar player, owning a bar, it's really funny that I don't drink, because I can remember the first time that he had me to his bar, he was just like, you want one of these? It's like, no, but my wife, my wife will have one. And she enjoyed it. But like, he asked me, he was like, what do you think? I was just like, yeah, tastes like a beer.
Yeah.
I never have had a taste for it. I think another reason is because like, I'd always have to get in the van at the end of the night and drive to the next city. And that was kind of cool. I liked driving at night, being like super creeped out. Hey, guess what, Jeremy? Thus far, your podcast is the first podcast that I haven't mentioned aliens or UFOs on.
Nice.
Yeah,
okay. Cool. Is that an accomplishment here, or?
Yeah. It's totally like, because of the album, The Rescue, everybody associates me as like the UFO guy. And also I host a paranormal here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I have a paranormal event here in town.
Nice.
And
no, I saw that on your Instagram, and
and it's like, I want to talk about those things, but not in every situation. Sometimes it's just better just to like talk about normal people stuff.
Well, we could have gone off into that. It's funny because
next time
I'm trying to figure out, just as just part of the podcast, of like, when am I just off in la la land, and like am I more distracted about what I want to talk about versus like, what people want to hear, right? And hopefully finding somewhere in the middle, right?
Here's my thought about it. You should, because this is your I don't want to call your podcast your hobby, but you mentioned that when you're on this thing during the day, that's there's different scenarios. There's different work circumstances. So you should go off. You should go off on those tangents. I want to hear what you have to talk about. I like to turn podcasts around and find out what all that stuff is on your dresser behind you, or what that map is of behind you. Things
that's
like that.
Jersey. That's New Jersey.
Okay. All right. But you get my point. Like, your personality does need to shine. Otherwise, it's just going to be kind of a boring podcast. Not to say that I've ever been a part of any boring podcast. I'll just say that it's a very important thing for me to be sitting down here with you, like we're having a cup of coffee at a coffee shop, or having a beer at a brewery or something like that. We're just two chums hanging out. And like, if you decide to go on a tangent, it's all the more reason for me to have just as much fun Whereas if you were asking me I have been on podcasts where they've asked very strict and stoic questions, and I felt like I was prompted, and then I felt like I was the one who was going off on tangents. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I was the one who was, and I had absolutely no clue what I was talking about, and am questionable about whether or not I actually had too much to smoke before that particular interview. But we won't talk anymore about that.
I guess I just kind of think that Tom DeLonge is the alien guy, and that's just never really like crossed my my mind.
Not familiar. Is he
Tom DeLonge?
Yeah,
from Blink 182.
Oh, I've heard of them before. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar. He seems like a great guy, but no. Honestly, I do know. But like I feel
he is like really into aliens.
He is, and like he's had so many of the greatest kind of ways of adapting to it. As far as like, you know, like now that we are coming around and finding it to be more of I mean, like world leaders are finally coming forward and saying, hey, we actually there actually is irrefutable evidence that this has been a phenomenon that's been happening. And then Tom DeLonge at like one of his very first shows that they play as Blink 182 and comes out on it's like, I told you so, or something like that on his shirt. Yeah. And I was just like, yes.
Were you losing your goddamn mind? Were you like, I told you.
No, I wasn't.
To all your friends.
I wasn't, but it's just like I felt like sharing all these memes, like the guy that's like, where have y'all been? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, like where, you know, like did you not hear what I was saying this entire time? But yeah, like and it's also funny because like there are a lot of people who are really into the phenomenon who have not been lucky enough to actually see some of these things.
Yeah.
And now I don't know what any of Tom's stories are. I've never really listened to any of Tom's stories, but I know that there are people who are absolutely convinced that the phenomenon is real who've never had an actual encounter. And for me and all the members of Codeseven to be as lucky as we have been in seeing these things over the years, it's just so fun to now be kind of like validated, to feel a little more validated by the fact that it is a very, you know, real phenomenon, and people are just now coming around to discovering that it's a real phenomenon. Whether or not it's these things that, you know, have almond-shaped eyes and little gray alien heads or whatever, I have no clue. I don't care about it. I just know about what I've seen, and what I've seen has been in the sky. It's been close. It's been far away. And it's been very real. I mean, and it's been experienced by myself and other people. Now, I've never seen like any kind of biological entity, and I won't claim to have ever seen any kind of biological entity, but it's definitely a real phenomenon. But what's also weird for me to ask is like, whenever people start talking about this, and I often ask this at like my paranormal group meetings and stuff, what was the very first time, if you can remember, Jeremy, what was the very first time that you ever saw that iconic image? And I know you're probably able to remember it, but the iconic image of a gray alien with the almond-shaped eyes.
Oh, God.
Can you remember what that was?
I feel like my sort of immediate thing is like on some poster, like.
Was it the poster
from the 90s or
okay. Was it like a skateboard poster, or was it from the movie Communion? Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you ever seen that image or like a lot of people were watching Unsolved Mysteries in the 90s? And
yeah. I watched a lot of Unsolved Mysteries.
And there was a Time Life book series that had that picture on the cover of the Time Life book series. And I just like
you're asking me to go way back into my
yeah. That's just something I like to find out, because like I feel like it's as, you know, like as far as like the association with that particular type of what we would call ET. Yeah. It's just so weird because like, you know,
where does that come from?
where is that, you know, you have to look at it like, was that the first, not the first meme, but was that like the first kind of like NFT, this creation of something that was like not a real thing, but a real thing. And now it's like, you know, Alien Workshop skateboards, or, you know, head shops. Anytime you go into a take me to your dealer.
Right. Yeah. The first thing I kind of think of too is just like one of the first South Park episodes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And I think that's so cool because like now that it's entered into your psyche and your subconscious, it's just like, I'm so fascinated to find out where everybody's first experience with that was, because it became kind of ubiquitous overnight in the 90s, in the early 90s.
For sure. Yeah.
And, it's like, well, no, it wasn't ubiquitous in the, it didn't come about in the 90s. It actually, if you look further back in history, has always kind of been there, but it's always been associated with fairies or elven creatures with, we'll just say, like overblown, features, like bodily features, like big ears instead of big eyes, or, but are always like smaller and diminutive in stature. And I think that's really funny because that's not a new thing.
Right.
Humankind from the beginning of our storytelling. So
now you're killing me because I do have to go. And now you're just making me feel bad that I didn't ask about aliens.
Next time.
I am always down for conversations.
Well, dude, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on too.
And I'm glad we got to digress into all these different areas. So
I kind of stuck to the script a little bit, and I kind of wish we had navigated off of it. But like seriously, I chat sometimes with like Ryan and stuff like that, and like connection is what I love. Connection with people.
It doesn't have to be a podcast. You've got my text number. You can text me now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I might, and I'm an open book as a person.
Doesn't have to be on the podcast. You can just reach out to me anytime. But I just want to say hey to all your listeners and tell them to keep it up and keep supporting you and do any kind of plug. This is Jeff from Codeseven, completely supporting the Scene Cast. Give you one of those game show waves there. And tell your kids I said hello. And,
I will. Tell them Uncle Jeff said hi.
I sure will. Yeah. Tell them I said hi.
Well, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. And
man, no problem.
We'll continue our conversation about aliens.
All right. Yeah. Just get in touch with me. Let me know when this is coming out so I can promote it or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay? Thanks, man.
Are you guys playing any live shows coming up?
In New Jersey on February 9th and in New York City on the 9th and New Jersey on the 10th of February.
Where in Jersey?
St. Vitus in New York and Salties in New Jersey.
Where the hell is Salties?
I think it's in Asbury Park.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Cool. Well, I wish I lived back there.
Well, I do. I hope I'm able to go on a ghost hunt. There's a very haunted establishment in Asbury Park. So I hope while I'm there, I'm able to visit this place. So
you should. Do you have any of the weird books? Weird New Jersey, Weird North Carolina. Weird New Jersey was the original book. Man, we used to go all over the place.
Dude, that's a weird state.
In Jersey. Yeah.
It's a weird state.
Yeah. We used to, oh man, I could talk about that for the long time.
Please, there's a place called, next time.
Yeah, there's a place called Clinton Road. You should look it up. It's
Clinton Road, spelled
Clinton
like
Road.
Okay, cool.
Like the president. Yeah.
Is it in the Pine Barrens?
It's not in the Pine Barrens. It's actually up in kind of northeast Jersey.
All right. Gonna look it up as soon as I get out here.
Got a lot of paranormal stuff going on. So
Clinton Road.
Yeah.
Jeremy, thank you so much, man.
No, thank you. I appreciate it, man. I'll talk to you later.
I hope you have a great rest of your night. We'll see you soon. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'd like to thank my guest, Jeff, for coming on again. It was so much fun. If you like this podcast, you can find us on all major podcasting platforms. We'd really appreciate if you would subscribe. You can also find us on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at The Scenecast. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.